Hello friends, and welcome back to Silverhawk Farm. We are here in my garden today and we are going to be starting some summer seeds. I am so excited to get everything started. I actually have a whole setup downstairs where I have grow lights and all of the things that I need to keep these plants really happy. But it's gross down there and the lighting is terrible. So we're gonna plant out here, I'll bring it downstairs, it'll all be good. So today we're gonna be planting about 150 plants, which sounds like a lot, but I can stretch quite a ways considering how many things I have plans for this year. This is not gonna be the only seeds that I start this year, but this is gonna be like my earliest seeds and kind of the bulk of most of my tomatoes, peppers, and some of the other summer crops that take a little while to get started. So when I sat down to start planning my garden for this year, I really struggled with what to focus on, especially in the last few years. I've had a lot of hiccups over the summer that have kind of prevented me from doing as much as I would like to do. I'm planning on kind of expanding quite a bit this summer and having a lot more space covered between the raised beds that I currently have here in this garden and the in-ground beds that I'm going to be planting way back yonder. So when I was sitting down to actually make the plan for this year, I was really stuck on like what to focus on, and I decided to go hard on the things that I know I can grow and I know my family will eat. We moved here in 2018. My first garden season here was 2019, so I've had a few years here to kind of experiment with what I can grow well, what the soil does well with, but also like what I'm able to preserve and actually use up in a year. And as a result of that, I'm going hard on tomatoes and peppers because we eat a lot of salsa, we eat a lot of pepper-based products. My husband enjoys a lot of like fresh peppers. I enjoy a lot of fresh tomatoes. So most of my focus in these beds, particularly the ones with the trellises, is going to be on getting tomatoes planted, getting peppers planted, getting onions planted in between them, so hopefully I have a decent onion harvest to preserve. And then in the fall, I'm going to be focusing a lot on garlic. So I actually took the time to fill all of my seed trays, get all of my seeds organized, and figure out what I'm going to be planting before I plant it for this video. Normally I don't do that. Normally I just sit down with a tray and start going wild doing stuff, but I have learned that that's how you end up with mislabeled stuff. So I am doing my best this year to actually be organized before I sit down with the seeds and before I sit down with the trays full of soil. So at some point I'll show off my whole like seed collection, but I use these photo organizers. They come in really wonderful, like colorful boxes full of them so you can keep stuff organized, and I really enjoy that. It's both good for organization and it's nice and like waterproof and keeps things really nice. So that's what this is in. So for seed starting supplies, there are a few things that I use. I have a variety of different like planting trays, cups. I've tried all of the things. Most things I would say work pretty well. If you've got a solo cup and a drill, you can make your own planting cups. I found those use a lot of soil for one plant, so it's not economical for the number of plants that I'm using. So I use these big old trays. This is a tray of 50. This is actually a special type of tray. It's actually like a patented thing that this farm came up with the shape of the bottom of this to prevent the roots from going around the circle if they get root bound. And then they also have like these holes in between to help a little bit more oxygen get through. So I found that these are really great for starting seeds, and that the plants that I grow in them tend to do a little bit better than the ones that I start off in the traditional seed trays. I can't recall the name of this company, but I will drop a link below with a link to this product as well as the other things that they've come up with. It's been a few years and I've gotten a lot of use out of them. They are very, very hardy. I cannot remember if it's changed, but I remember shipping being a little steep, and I ended up going in on a friend with a bigger order so that we could qualify for the free shipping. So that's worth thinking of always when you're doing things like seed starting. If you can get a big pack of something and split the cost with someone, that will bring down the seed starting cost quite a bit. So this blue bottom tray is a Bootstrap Farmer tray. I am not affiliated with these companies at all. I just use their products. But Bootstrap Farmer is probably the highest quality trays that I have seen personally. They are extremely thick. They're really durable. They come in cool colors. I have had really good luck with the company and their customer service. They are quite a bit pricier than like the regular trays that you would find at any of your regular garden store, but my experience with those thinner trays is that they tend to break after about a season. So if it's your first season and you have no idea if you want to do this again next year, go with something cheap and see if you like it. But if you're planning on doing this year after year, it's usually worth it to either get some really high quality trays or to get into soil blocking, which is not something that I've done yet, but I would love to play with eventually. And that's basically just a tool that makes it so that you don't have to use any sort of planters. As always, I'll drop all the links below so that you can find all of the things that you need. And then beyond the seeds for my seed starting supplies, the only other thing I really use is a regular old bamboo skewer. My extremely fancy system here is that I draw a line at 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 1 inch on the bamboo skewer, which is just really a normal bamboo skewer that I use for like barbecue. And then this tends to be about the perfect size to poke down, but it also gives me an idea of how far I'm going down so that I can keep it standard. As a general rule, you're going to want to plant seeds twice as deep as they are wide, though you can look through all the seed packets and figure out the exact optimum planting space. I tend to just go by that. All right, so I'm gonna be starting with my kind of hodgepodge together tray. That is basically everything that's not hot peppers or tomatoes I'm gonna be putting in this tray. I basically made 2 tags for each thing because I didn't want to make one for each because, as you see, I'm not going to be using a lot of seeds today. I don't necessarily expect every cell to germinate, but I also want to have one extra because I always end up losing it if I only have one. So that's what we're doing. It makes sense in my head. Chamomile is a teeny, teeny, tiny little seed. So I'm going to be surface sowing it, which basically just means spreading it out on the surface, and it will mix itself in as it gets watered. So my hope for chamomile this year is for enough to produce so that I can actually like dry some for tea for over the winter. I drink a lot of chamomile tea. I absolutely love it. If you're not familiar, it grows really big and beautiful. Bees love it, and all you do is you pick off the flower buds and dry them to use for tea. So I'm starting 5 cells of that, but I also will be just throwing chamomile seeds haphazardly through the garden whenever I see space, because I'm really hoping to get some of those kind of reseeding themselves year after year. And then for herbs, I'm basically going hard on herbs that I know I'll use a lot of. I have learned that I don't like parsley, and I don't know why I keep growing it. It doesn't taste like anything. I'm sticking to herbs that have flavor. So this is a dwarf Greek basil. I hadn't actually intended to start this today. I was planning on doing the dwarf basil in a container later on, but I can't find my regular basil, and I want to be able to eat basil early in the year, so we're just going with it. I prefer ProMix organic potting soil because I can get it cheaper at Menards than most other brands that I have really good luck with. I also really like Happy Frog and Fox Farms, which are a little bit more expensive but super duper high quality potting soil. This oregano I'm manifesting for lots of pasta sauce. I'm really excited about pasta sauce this year. I'm really excited about canning in general this year because I have a lot of confidence in my canning now, and I'm feeling like I'm doing a better job of prioritizing garden things that will can well rather than just things I can eat fresh and then ending up canning them. And then let's go ahead and do cucumbers. One of the other things that I have learned is that I am not going to use a billion cucumber plants because I really prefer fridge pickles over canned pickles. And I learned that over the last couple of years, like I can make fridge pickles very easily. They stay crunchy, whereas when you can them, they tend to get kind of mushy. And I really like the simplicity of fridge pickles. If you want to know how to make them, I made a video about it. I'll link it down below, as well as up here and all the other places. I really recommend them and genuinely do prefer them over canning. So if you're intimidated by canning and you still like pickles, go for some fridge pickles. So I'm just going to be planting 5 to begin with today, and then because I live somewhere that gets really hot, I'm gonna be succession sowing those, which means that once I have these planted, I'll start some more in a month, I'll start some more a month after that. So as some of them kind of peter out due to the heat or get really bitter, I can still have things growing and coming in. So I have Early Fortune and Muncher cucumber. I think I'm going to go 2 Muncher and 3 Early Fortune because Early Fortune implies I'm going to have an earlier plant, and I like that. I don't know if that's gonna work out that way, but you know, they name them that way for a reason. So these are quite big seeds. I'm gonna be going down about an inch, and I just used my little bamboo skewer to make holes very gently. I'm only doing 1 seed per cell, which, like I said, I don't necessarily recommend unless you know you're gonna get really good germination. I just really hate having to thin plants after they've sprouted, and sometimes I tend to forget to. So I'd rather not have every cell germinate than stunt the plants that do germinate because I'll procrastinate thinning them. So I'm just trying it this way this year. Normally I do it the other way. We're gonna see how it goes. And then the early fortune cucumbers. Both of these are meant to be both for fresh eating and for canning. I'm planting some long purple eggplant. It is my hope that they will not be overtaken by flea beetles, which happens every single year. And I would like to grow them on the trellises behind me because they're long and I'm hoping they'll like hang down really pretty. Maybe some of them might survive. Also, if you're the sort of person who's like just getting into homesteading or gardening and you're like worried that you have a black thumb, that's not a thing. Everyone I know who does this sort of stuff has killed more plants than you can imagine. I don't know how many plants I've killed. I know it's in the hundreds. It would not shock me if I had reached 1,000. So if you feel like you're bad at growing plants just because they die under your care, that's just part of the process. And you just gotta keep trying. And then I have my sweet peppers is the last thing that we're gonna be putting in this tray. And I'm actually keeping my sweet peppers purposefully away from my hot peppers because I tend to mix them up. And I also have it in the blue tray, whereas the hot peppers are going in the pink tray. So maybe I will actually know which peppers are spicy in the garden when I'm randomly pulling them, which never happens. It's always kind of a gamble. So we're gonna start with a big red sweet pepper. Most of my plants today are from Am I Gardener or Baker Creek. I recommend both of them as reliable. I've had really good germination with both companies. Weirdly, I've heard mixed things about germination, like with companies that I've had really good luck with, which always makes me wanna ask a lot of questions. Like, if you only order all of your seeds from one company, 1 year, and then you get bad germination on all of those seeds, it might be the process that you're using. It could be the company, but it might be the process that you're using. So I always take it with a grain of salt when people are like, this company or that company has terrible germination, because that has not been my experience with the major heirloom companies. Next one is a Sunbright sweet pepper, which is a yellow pepper. I love yellow peppers. I love all the peppers, honestly. Another thing that a lot of people who don't garden don't realize is that green pepper isn't a variety. Green pepper is a not fully ripened pepper of any sweet pepper variety, which is why it's valid if you don't like it, because it's not like fully sweetened yet. I like green peppers, but I understand why fully matured peppers taste way better. Oh my goodness, just this week, the non-crow birds have started chirping. The crickets and the frogs have started making noise. It's like very spring outside right now, and I'm loving it so much. This is the red Marconi pepper. This is the only sweet pepper I reliably have really good luck with. And part of the reason for that is because it matures at a relatively small stage. So it gets kind of small for a sweet pepper, but because of that, you don't have to wait as long for it to be edible. And so you'll get them a little bit earlier. That's another tip. If you live somewhere that doesn't have a super long summer, peppers take forever to produce. So if you stick with smaller pepper varieties, they'll be harvestable earlier, and you might get a little bit more harvest than you would with the big peppers that take forever. One disadvantage to using potting soil is that you do have kind of like twigs and like clumps of dirt, which are not ideal for these small seedlings. As I was packing these trays, I did what I could to kind of pull out any big things that I was concerned about and break up any clumps, but I clearly missed this one quite a bit. So I'm just using my pokey end of my very fancy tool to break up this dirt. You can also use like a seed starting mix. The thing about those is they do not have fertilizer in them, which, if you know what you're doing, could be preferable. For me, I'm gonna forget to fertilize these. I like to have a little bit more leeway around giving them nutrients so that my neglect doesn't kill them. And then we've got the Coral Bell, another sweet pepper. This is an orange one. I mostly just went through the Am I Gardener website last year and picked a bunch of colors that looked pretty, to be perfectly honest. All right, I'm losing daylight, so I gotta move a little bit faster through the next couple of trays. But the next tray is gonna be hot peppers, I love hot peppers. I grow a lot of them. I make hot sauce. I make my own spices. I grow a lot of paprika. I cook with them all the time. I love canned chilies. Like I could cook with hot peppers forever. So we're making a lot of them. I'm gonna go through all of the varieties at the front here to talk through what we're planting today. I have pepperoncini, which I struggled to identify as a hot pepper, but it's a little spicier than a sweet pepper, so it's going in with those. I have my favorite, which is the Lutschauer paprika, I think is how it's pronounced, and it is how you make the spiced paprika. There are a couple of different paprika varieties, and it's got a lot of flavor. It's got a bit of spice, but it's not like overwhelmingly spicy. I'm not the most hardcore person when it comes to spice, so I tend to go from like mild to medium spiciness with most things. So I really highly recommend this. I've only ever been able to find it at Baker Creek. I'll be sure to link both websites down below. And then the lemon spice jalapeno, I actually haven't grown a ton of before, but I'm excited to try it out. It looks delicious, and anything that has like that lemon or like kind of like a fruity name won't necessarily taste a lot like a fruit, but it does tend to have like a really interesting flavor and like add, instead of just spiciness, like a lot of good taste to dishes. Same thing with the lemon drop pepper. I have grown these before. I'm not gonna go overboard on them because they're so productive, and they're also tiny and slightly annoying to harvest. So I'm gonna try to have fewer lemon drop this year than I had last year. As much as they were fun and I got a ton of peppers off of them, despite being fairly neglectful last season. And then we've got some cayenne long slim hot peppers. So those are actual cayenne peppers. You can dehydrate that and make your own cayenne. So I'm gonna be growing a lot of those because I love cayenne. And then my favorite jalapeno variety is Craig's Grande Jalapeno. They are delicious. They grow to be a good size. They're just like the picturesque jalapeno you think of when you think of jalapenos. They do all the wonderful things. I'm gonna get these started, and then we're gonna talk about some tomatoes. And now for the moment I have been waiting for since our first frost last year. Time to plant tomatoes. Tomatoes are my favorite. I love growing them. I love how many varieties there are. So I'm just going to talk through what varieties we're going with. Again, most of these seeds are either from My Gardener or Baker Creek. Barry's Crazy Cherry Tomato is a really wonderful variety. It's a smaller tomato, and they grow kind of like grapes in clusters, which is super cool, but they're also just incredibly abundant. I've always had so much luck with having a ton of tomatoes off of these plants, even when other plants are dealing with blight or drought or any of the other things that tomatoes deal with. So highly recommend that as kind of an easier plant. And then I'm going to be trying the Sweetie Cherry Tomato. Honestly, I don't have a ton of experience with the Sweetie cherry tomato. I just wanted kind of like a more regular cherry tomato, especially as I'm thinking about getting into some like market farming. I would like to know like a standard red cherry tomato that I like and can reliably grow, even though it's probably not my favorite thing to eat as much as like the weird yellow stripy ones. I am gonna try out a few varieties this year to see what grows well for me. And then I've got the New Yorker tomato, which is supposed to be fairly fleshy. It's supposed to be very productive, and again, something that should grow really consistently. Paul Robeson is one of the tomatoes that Jess from Roots and Refuge recommends. A lot of her favorite tomatoes are on my tomato list because they're delicious, and she recommended them and I tried them, and now I grow them every year. So Paul Robeson is wonderful. One of my favorite like darker tomatoes, because I don't always love the darker ones. I tend to like the really juicy, sweet, like yellow tomatoes. Raspberry Liana is my hero. It is one of the very first things that I grew in my first garden here on the farm. It was so prolific, it produced so well. It also tends to be the first tomato plant that produces every year. So I'm gonna grow quite a few of those because I know I can rely on them. I know they're delicious. They're like plum-sized tomatoes, so they're a little bit smaller, but they're perfect for making a sandwich. Dr. Witchies is a yellow tomato, super sweet, wonderful for sandwiches. Same with Kellogg's. Kellogg's breakfast tomato is another super sweet, very large tomato that's wonderful for sandwiches. I'm probably mispronouncing this, but ananas noir is one of those like vanity tomatoes that I grow because I think it looks cool. It's got like some really cool like green and red streaking. It's very interesting. And the photos I feel like almost don't do it justice. Like it's such a beautiful tomato. Oh, and then the big rainbow tomato. I'm a sucker for stripy tomatoes. So these are some stripy tomatoes. I love them. The Arkansas Traveler, I've heard does really well in like humid environments. I didn't have great luck with it last year, but I didn't do a great job of maintaining my garden last year. So we're gonna try again this year. It's supposed to be very prolific and very heat tolerant. It was developed for like being perfect for Arkansas, which being in Kansas, we're not that far from. So I was hoping that I could get some good production from them. And then Sunrise Bumblebee is another just ridiculously prolific small tomato. I'm gonna get these in. I'm going to listen to the geese as well as a podcast, as well as my dog chewing on a stick apparently. And then I'll talk to you a little bit about watering, maintenance, and care, as well as giving you some ideas for a growing space, because these guys are gonna die if I keep them out here in the cold. All right, y'all, it is starting to get chilly out here. So as I'm planting the last bit of these tomatoes, I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about caring for seeds. I'll be getting freezes until mid to late April here in Kansas. So obviously these plants are not going to do well out here. And even without freezing, these plants that are meant for summer can survive a cold night that's above freezing, but it can stunt them and actually affect their productivity for the whole season. So once I'm done planting these, they will be going inside to my basement area where I have my grow lights. My grow light is kind of an exaggeration. My grow light is actually just shop lights that has like a really high output and is also the type of like color to match sunlight. I'll see if I can get some more resources for that, and here in the upcoming weeks I will go ahead and get my space cleaned up and make a video down there so I can show you every single thing that I use for maintaining my seeds. But the short version is you want really bright bulbs that are on the white side, that are very daylight-like, and you also want them to be very close to your plants, but not so close that they're like burning. Personally, I use LED shop lights so they don't get very hot. I'm able to put them very, very close to the plants, and I actually have a chain that comes up that helps me pull the lights up as the plants get bigger. Beyond that, you have all sorts of options. I am hopefully going to be building a little greenhouse for my seedlings next year, so I'm really looking forward to that. The basement solution isn't necessarily my favorite. It's not close to water, it's not convenient, but it does work. While I'm waiting for these to come up, what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna be keeping these on my kitchen counter until they come up so that I don't forget they exist. And I will be using both bottom watering, which is where you put the water directly into the bottom of this tray and you let the roots soak it up, which at this point would be useless because there are no roots. And so while I'm waiting for the roots to develop, I will also be using a sprayer to just spray water over the tops of it to keep the soil moist on top. I'm gonna keep the soil very consistently moist for probably the first week or so. Once I start to see those sprouting up and I feel like everything's germinated, I'll scale back on that a bit and then gradually move towards only bottom watering, so that in order to get water, those plants have to dig their roots down a little bit deeper. That'll encourage deeper root growth, which will end up with healthier, happier plants in the long run. All right, sweet friends, that is 150-ish plants started today. I am so excited for this summer season. Definitely be sure to subscribe so that I can show you how I harden off, how I'm gonna plant these, how pretty they're gonna be, how they're gonna make such good salsa, all of the things. I am going to get inside, thaw my fingers, and get these watered in, so hopefully we can have sprouts in the next few days. I hope that you are also really enjoying the season. I hope to see you really, really soon, and in the meantime, treat yourself to something delicious. It's actually taking some willpower not to just pop these in as a snack right now.